Om. 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 Om Sahana Vavatu Sahano Bhunaktu Sah Viryam Karavavahai Tejasvinavadhitamastu ma vidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Samasta Jana Kalyane Niratam Karunamayam Namami Chinmayam Devam Tatkaram Brahma Vidharam. So we invoke Bhagavan's grace and Puja Gurudev's blessings on this new text that we are embarking on. So the text for this time is called Narada Bhakti Sutra. And first, before we even enter the text, let's talk about why we're even doing this text. So we have studied together. We've gone through a beautiful journey together. We went through Sadhana Panchakam, then we did Tattva Bodha, then we did Atma Bodha, and we even did Bhaja Govindam, Manashodhanam, Upadesha Sara. We went through all of these texts. And now in Puja Gurudev's study scheme, we see that Narada Bhakti Sutra is next. And so one might wonder, why are we studying such a text, right? Why are we studying this here and now? Well, the truth is, after listening to Vedanta for some time, we go to so many classes, we listen to videos, podcasts, in stillness or on the move, but it doesn't seem to digest. And we almost think like Vedanta is a theory. I was at Sapna's home and I was sharing this message that we almost think that Vedanta is a theory. It's a theoretical thing. And because we think it's a theory, we feel like we have to practice it. We have to practice, do this, do that. But actually, Vedanta is not a theory. Vedanta is a fact that you are that infinite, eternal self. That's a fact. That's not theoretical. If we think it's theoretical, it's because we haven't understood it. We haven't thought it out. We haven't reasoned it in our minds. And probably we lack that tuning in with a teacher. So when we feel like Vedanta is a theory, then we feel like we have to practice all of these things. But when we understand that Vedanta is a fact, and at any point in time, you cannot move away from your real nature, even if you wanted to, then life is just being. That's all life is. Now imagine if I told you, practice being Bhavani, or practice being Amishi. How odd would that be, right? How will I practice being Shubhani? How do I do that? I wouldn't even know how to do that. That's so strange, because it's just so natural to be Shubhani. In the same way, don't you think it's kind of odd if somebody says, practice being Brahman? That's so odd. How would you practice being Brahman? You are already Brahman. And so this bhakti or devotion is that which is in between. When we feel like what we're learning is theoretical and we feel like we have to practice all of these things, then that which bridges the gap to make us understand that, hey, you're already there. Just remain as you are. That which bridges the gap is bhakti or devotion. And bhakti or devotion bridges the gap because very often that main obstacle lies in the mind. The mind is very hard to sort of melt, dissolve. The only solution in life is dissolution, the dissolution of the mind, the dissolution of the ego. So the mind, the ego, is that which comes in between all of this. And so that which melts the mind, which melts the ego, that is called bhakti. So that which melts the mind or melts the ego is called bhakti or devotion. That's why we're studying this. We're studying this because we have not melted the mind enough to understand who we really are. The mind still, even after studying Manashodhanam, the mind still has all kinds of disturbances, impurities, maybe even less, but still there. Even after studying Upadesha Sara, and we want to engage in our spiritual practice, we can't seem to be consistent. So it is that mind that we're treating. And bhakti is all about just dissolving that mind in God. And that's why we're studying this text. Now, these devotional sutras are called aphorisms. And we'll get to that word in a little bit. But first, I want to get into the first word, which is Narada. So these sutras are given by Narada. These aphorisms or short statements of devotion are given by Narada. Now, many of you who read stories or read either Bhagavatam, Ramayana, might have come across Narada. And whenever you come across Narada, he's like the trickster. He's the one who steers things. But he's also a very, very profound sage. Narada's name means Naram Dadati iti Narada, which means the one who gives supreme knowledge is called Narada. And this Narada is the Manasaputra or the mind son of Brahmaji. And he's the brother of these Sanat Kumars. So this Narada actually was a sage, a great, great sage, but he got tempted a lot. And he got infatuated with people. And so he took a lower birth. His next birth was a lower birth. And he was the son of a maidservant. And what happened there in his birth is that his mother used to always entertain saints and sages. So, in Bharat, people kept their doors open all the time. So when saints, they used to have like a courtyard, because when saints and sages would come, then they would have a place to sleep. And they would always check if anybody needs bhiksha, anybody needs food, because this was our culture, that there would be many saints and sages traveling. So people would actually keep their houses open spaces in their houses for people to stay. And so his mother was very devoted to saints and sages, and they would come to Narada's house. And when we are with a saint or sage, we come to, we go to them or they come to our house. It's a great blessing. I was just with somebody the other day, and she was telling me how she grew up with this guru who kept coming to her family's home. And because of that, she knew what to do, how to behave, what not to do. She was very much trained, and she said it was all because of his visits to our family. So when we actually bring a saint or sage to our home, it's a great blessing. And so this is what happened to Narada. And he used to eat the prasad of the saints, and he used to listen to their dialogues. And they also gave him mantras to chant. And so they would come often and visit. And then Sur, his mother, passed away. So he started roaming about, singing the name of God. And one day he got darshan. Darshan means he got a vision of God, but just a glimpse, just got a glimpse of God. And he wanted more. So Bhagavan said, do more practices. And thus the next birth, he was born as this celestial sage, Narada. And so Narada comes, from a background of a lot of spiritual tapasya or austerity, a lot of devotion to God. And it is said in some places that Narada is the one who invented the veena. So he brings his veena everywhere. And if one is a devotee to God, then he gives you the darshan of God or tells you how to get the darshan of God. And so his name is also Deva Darshana, the one who gives people the darshan of God, or he himself who has the darshan of God. And the ones who trouble people a lot, then he invites the wrath of God. So this is Narada. And he moves everywhere. Now, in Srimad Bhagavatam, there's this one beautiful episode on Narada meeting Bhakti. So Narada actually meets Bhakti. What happens is Narada sees the Sanat Kumars, and he's kind of, he sees his brothers, Sanat Kumars, there are 4 of them. He sees his brothers and he's kind of distressed. And they ask him, why are you distressed? He said, this is what happened. What happened is I saw this young woman with 2 old men, and she was feeling very, very troubled. And when I asked her what her name was Bhakti, or devotion. And her 2 older sons were Jnana and Vairagya. Jnana, knowledge, and Vairagya, dispassion. Her 2 older sons were Jnana and Vairagya. And so what happened was, she didn't know how to revive her older sons. Her older sons were asleep and they wouldn't wake up. So this Bhakti, she's very young. Her 2 older sons, Jnana and Vairagya, knowledge and dispassion, are asleep. They won't wake up. And so Narada said, don't worry, I'll try a few things to wake up knowledge and dispassion. And so Narada chants the Vedas, but they don't wake up. Then Narada even talks about Vedanta, but they don't wake up. So Narada chants the Bhagavad Gita and they don't wake up. So he's in utter despair and he says, what do I do to wake up knowledge and dispassion? Because knowledge and dispassion are key, but they're asleep. And so the Sanat Kumars tell him, read the Bhagavad Sapta to them. Bhagavad Sapta, the stories of Sri Krishna, the stories of the avatars of Bhagavan. Read that and they will wake up. And so he does that. And knowledge and devotion, knowledge and dispassion, rather, they wake up. So what does this tell us? This tells us that even though we might have knowledge and even though we have dispassion, we still get tempted. And many times our knowledge and dispassion are asleep. They're asleep. And sometimes more knowledge doesn't wake up our knowledge. What makes up our knowledge and dispassion is devotion. And this is also seen in Ramayana. How is it seen in Ramayana? Now you all know the story of the Sanjeevani, right? That Indrajit, the son of Ravana, what did he do? He threw that astra to Lakshman, and Lakshmana was down. Lakshmana was down and he was in Sri Rama's arms. And Lakshmana symbolizes dispassion. And Sri Rama symbolizes knowledge. So both were down. Lakshmana was down, he was wounded, and Sri Rama was also down because he was crying. So knowledge and dispassion were down. But what happens? Hanumanji comes, right? The great Hanuman. Who is Hanumanji? Devotion. And he takes that Sanjeevani, not the plant, the whole mountain, you all know the story, and he brings it to revive Sri Lakshmana and of course to remove the grief of Sri Rama. So it is seen here again and again that this devotion revives knowledge and revives dispassion. So when we get carried away and bummed out, thinking like, why am I not practicing this on the path? Why am I not living my life the ideal way? I get it, I've listened to it, but why is this happening? It's because we lack this devotion. This also happened in the life of Vedavyasa. Now, see, with Naradji, there's so many stories associated. So this session is just to open up Naradji's greatness for us so that we can have some reverence for the one who gave us these beautiful sutras. Vedavyasaji. Now, who is Vedavyasaji? Vedavyasaji is the avatar of God himself. Vedavyasaji compiled all the Vedas. He wrote Mahabharata, he wrote the Bhagavad Gita, the Brahma Sutras, the Puranas, all of that. And Vedavyasaji was feeling down. He was feeling down and out. And when he was feeling down and out, he said, I've written all of this. I've learned so much, but why is it that I still feel incomplete? And at that time, Naradaji appears to him. And he tells him, it's because you haven't recounted the stories of God. You haven't recounted the ways of God. And that's why you're feeling down. And Vedvyasa was so amazing because he told Naradaji, he asked Naradaji, tell me, what am I lacking? And this is the most beautiful thing about Vedvyasa. He, the one who compiled all the Vedas, who put everything together, the Bhagavad Gita, Brahma Sutras, he looks at Narada and says, what am I lacking? And so Naradaji tells him. How many of us do that? We think we know everything, right? But how many of us actually ask, what am I lacking? And because Vedvyasji asked that, Naradaji said, write these devotional stories of God. And so Vedvyasji wrote the Bhagavata. Imagine this. And that same Narada inspired who? That same Narada inspired Ratnakar to become Valmiki. And you all know this story. Ratnakar was a thief, he was a dacoit. He was stealing things from people and harming people. And then he met Narada in the forest, and Narada was unafraid. And he said, Ratnakar said to him, why aren't you afraid? And Narada said, you should be afraid. You should be afraid. You are looting people, you are hurting people. And what are you doing all of this for? And Ratnakar said, I am doing this for my family. And then Narada said, will your family share in your sins, all the sins that you're going to acquire? And Ratnakar said, yes. But when he went to ask his family, he found out that none of them would share in his sins, even though he was looting for them. And so he surrenders to Narada, and Narada gives him the mantra of Ram. And of course, Ratnakar doesn't say Ram, he says Mara, Mara, Mara. But eventually he chants the name of God, so much so he forgets himself that an anthill builds on him, and Valmika, and that's why he's called Valmiki. He chants so much that he forgets himself, that so many ants are crawling upon him. And so therefore he's called Valmiki. And this Valmiki is the one who wrote the Ramayana. So this sage Narada is the one who inspired Vedavyasa. This sage Narada is the one who inspired Valmiki. This sage Narada is also the one who inspired Dhruva. Now, there are two beautiful children in Bhagavata, and one of them is Dhruva. And Dhruva, obviously, his father had two wives, Suniti and Suruchi. And what happened was Dhruva's stepbrother was sitting on the lap of his father and enjoying so much, but Dhruva didn't have access to his father's lap. And he was so sad because his stepmother was very, very possessive. And so she told Dhruva, she said, if you want to sit in your father's lap, you have to be born from my stomach and you have to do a lot of austerities. And so Dhruva cried and he went to his own mother. And his own mother said, don't worry. She is right in one way, that you do have to do a lot of austerities to sit not only in your father's lap, but in a place of God, in a place where you won't be removed. And so Dhruva goes to the forest. 5 years old, he goes to the forest. And Naradaji appears to him to test him. And he says, look, Dhruva, this path is going to be very hard for you. Do you think you can actually survive in the forest with minimal food, with the temperature? Why don't you go back home? Why don't you go to school and get married and then come back later in your life? And Dhruva said, no. If you're telling me it's hard, it's okay, because now Dhruva tells Narada, I had your darshan. I had the vision of a saint. And so I know if I have a vision of a saint, it is just ear long before I have the vision of God. And so here again, Narada blesses Dhruva and gives him a mantra. And that Dhruva does attain a position where nobody can bring him down. And it is this Narada who also rescued Prahlad. Everybody knows the story of Prahlad, but when Prahlad's mother Kayadu was pregnant with him, what happened was her husband, Hiranyakashipu, went for austerity. And at that time, Indra came to his kingdom and wanted to take away Kayadu and kill the baby inside her stomach. But Narada rescued Kayadu and the baby in her stomach, and he brought her to the ashram. And what did Narada do? He kept talking to Kayadu, and all the saints and sages kept talking to Kayadu because he wanted that baby to listen to everything. And there were times even Kayadu was asleep, Narada would still keep talking. He would still keep talking to that baby because he knew that that baby would remember everything. And that baby was Prahlad. So in this way, you see how Narada has an influence in so many people's lives. So there are many, many more stories of Narada, but I won't tell you all of them because then, we will take the whole class for it. So this is Narada. This is the greatness of Narada, who's giving, the one who's full of something is the only one who can give us something, right? So this Narada is full of devotion, and he is giving us that devotion. His whole life he's carrying his veena, and all he's doing is chanting the name of God. This is Narada. And all he's doing is chanting the name of God and meeting people, appearing right where he's needed to kindle that fire to meet God. So don't think that now this Narada is some celestial sage somewhere at some time here and there. In your life, whenever some being appears at that particular time to kindle that fire of devotion to God, that person is Narada. So in your life, there must be a Narada in and through your life. That is who he is. Now, what is a sutra? So we've seen why bhakti. And this bhakti will be expounded throughout the whole text through 84 sutras. 84 sutras. So what is a sutra? Sutra means thread. Suchanat sutra. It also means that which indicates. So it's a thread. Now, the sutra has a very particular definition. In a shastra, the sutra, which is a thread, which is also aphorism or short statement, it has to be alpaksharam, means of minimum words. Asandigdham means free from any doubts. Saravat, it has to be power-packed with essence. Vishvato mukha, and multifaceted. Astobham. It's free from superfluous words. There's no like that in the sutra. There's no superfluous words. And anavadyam, no defect. This sutram sutra vido vidu. This is what's called sutra. So alpaksharam, asandigdham, saravat vishvatomukham. And it is astobham anavadyam. So in this way, there are 84 of these short, power-packed statements. Sutras, you'll also see in Yoga Sutras, we have Patanjali's Yoga Sutras, very short statements. But each short statement has a very long commentary. Also, we have the Brahma Sutras. That's also there, Brahma Sutra. They're just short statements, but lots of commentary. Jaimini Sutras. So like that, there is these Bhakti Sutras. And at some point, I'm going to make you write some sutras, your own sutras, after we get more into the sutras and you can see what they're like. So I think this much is for today. So we've understood why Bhakti, why devotion. We've understood who's Narada and what is a sutra, and therefore Narada Bhakti Sutra. Now I will pause because there's some things that I want you to really discuss on, and then when you're ready, you can come back, okay?